If you've ever been in a relationship that leaves you feeling constantly unsettled and anxious, like you're treading carefully but you don't really know why, there's a good chance that you're not finding emotional safety in that relationship. And for those of us who grew up in a chaotic home or in an emotionally unstable environment, we might not even know what emotional safety feels like because we don't have a baseline. And even when we hear other people talking about emotional safety and feeling emotionally comfortable, we might not know what that feels like in ourselves, in our own bodies, because we never learned what it means to feel at ease in connection. So then how would we even know what to look for when we assess a new partner or when we assessed our existing relationships, let alone know how to help build emotional safety ourselves? Hi, I'm Madalena and this is You Reclaimed. Around here we talk a lot about childhood trauma and nervous system dysregulation and how these things shape our adult relationships, the way we connect to other people, and how we show up in the world. And we do this work so that we can finally take our lives back and live them on our own terms. Today we're talking about what emotional safety actually looks like and feels like, not just conceptually, but in your body, so that you can, one, help to create emotional safety in your relationships because it is a two-person job. And two, get really clear, both for yourself and for any of your future partners, on what emotional safety means to you and what your expectations look like, because a lot of the time, knowing how to set proper expectations for what we want to experience emotionally, it's a very important first step.
Wait, did you subscribe yet? I have a lot more to share and I'd love to have you here for it. It really helps my channel grow and I appreciate it so much.
So what exactly is emotional safety, and what does it mean in real terms on a day-to-day basis to experience emotional safety in a relationship with another person? Well, at its core, emotional safety is the ability to show up as your real self in a relationship. That means being able to voice your real needs, your real opinions, your very real vulnerabilities. And it's not just emotional, it's physical too. At the somatic level, at the physical level, emotional safety means that your nervous system doesn't feel like it's bracing for impact all the time. It means that you can rest easy knowing that nothing bad is about to happen. You're not constantly scanning your environment, your home, your partner's micro expressions, their tone of voice, their actions for signs that something bad is about to happen or explode, or that your partner might take their love away at any moment. When there's emotional safety, you feel secure. You feel seen for who you are and accepted for that. You don't feel like you need to keep performing or managing a social persona just to keep your partner loving you. Because one of the deepest parts of intimacy is the ability to take that mask off, to let your guard down when you're at rest, when you're alone with your partner, to take a breath and not feel like you're about to be judged, that you're about to be punished or abandoned. That is one of the highlights of an intimate relationship and why we crave having real intimacy with a partner. Now, that doesn't mean that the relationship has to be perfect. It doesn't mean that there is no conflict, but it does mean that you feel like you're allowed to be a full human being with real emotions, with real needs, and very real flaws, which we all have. But why is it so hard for us to know what emotional safety should feel like? Why is it so hard to recognize it even when we do find it? The main reason is that so many of us who grew up in emotionally unsafe environments, we don't know what emotional safety should feel like. If your earliest experiences of love involved inconsistency or withdrawal or emotional punishment like silence, emotional manipulation, then your nervous system is calibrated to a very different level than someone who grew up in a chill and supportive and emotionally stable environment. Your nervous system is calibrated to constant nervous tension. So when someone does actually make you feel safe, it doesn't necessarily feel good. It doesn't register as a good feeling. It might register as unsettling or disquieting or even suspicious, because emotional peace is not something that you instinctively know how to recognize unless you've done some work to dig into your earliest traumas and environment. And this is one of the big reasons that so many of us confuse emotionally chaotic, even toxic relationships with love. We don't know what peace feels like emotionally. And that confusion is one of the main drivers behind things like trauma bonds or toxic situationships or even limerence. At the root of why we get involved in these relationships is very often unresolved wounding from our earliest years. So then let's talk about what it actually looks like to find emotional safety in a relationship and what it looks like when someone is acting in a way that's not emotionally safe. Because there's a lot of subtlety in emotional safety. We're complicated people, and our behavior isn't as simple as acting with complete love and affection or with outright hatred and disdain for each other. Most of the time we act in much more subtle ways. Sometimes even underhanded ways that slowly undermine the other person's emotional safety. And sometimes we're the ones doing it without realizing it. So this conversation isn't just about whether the other person is safe. It's also about how we are showing up to create that safety. And that requires that we look deeper than just the surface level behavior. So what might emotional safety in a relationship look like? It might look something like this. You can express your feelings without being mocked or shut down. You're not treading carefully or walking on eggshells trying to manage your partner's moods or reactions. You're not afraid that if you say the wrong thing, the other person will disappear or they will lose affection for you or stop loving you altogether. Of course, this doesn't mean that you can behave poorly or however you want or in a way that hurts the other person. The other person doesn't use your emotions to manipulate you. And in this one point, there's a lot that can be said because this is often one of the hallmarks of toxic relationships. For example, if your partner is purposely trying to make you jealous by talking to other people in front of you, or not even in front of you, or if they're blatantly flirting with other people or trying to make you feel insecure about yourself, those are ways emotions are used as weapons. That is not emotional safety. There's no gaslighting, no stonewalling, or emotional game playing in a safe relationship. And at the core of all of that is a lack of honesty and emotional maturity. Emotional safety, it grows in relationships where both people can be forthcoming and direct about what they need, what they want, and what their boundaries are. That's how we avoid falling into patterns where one person is playing games or trying to manipulate the other or shutting down instead of showing up. But again, this is a two-person party. One person cannot do the work for both people. Lastly, you feel like your sensitivity is welcomed and not weaponized. That means that you are allowed to express your hurt feelings. You're allowed to say that something has made you feel insecure or upset you, and the other person is allowed to do the same. And often we have sneaky ways of setting unfair boundaries on this one point, or we set boundaries that work only in our favor. So we'll say, of course, we're allowed to express our own hurt feelings, but then we become very uncomfortable and even defensive when the other person expresses their hurt feelings. And this is what I mean by emotional safety. The road has to go both ways. And maybe most importantly, there is clarity so that you're not constantly decoding the other person's mixed signals or trying to earn the emotional stability of a connection. What do I mean by that? I mean, you're not trying to keep the relationship functional by suppressing who you are or by hiding your needs because that's the only way that the relationship can survive. That is absolutely not what emotional safety looks like. To add to that, the ground rules and expectations in the relationship, they have to be fairly predictable, meaning they don't change depending on the day. And not having emotional safety in a relationship is obviously the opposite of everything we just listed. So instead of going through the list again and just flipping it around, let me just give you some real life examples of what it might look like in practice to not have emotional safety. Your partner puts you down when you try to exert any level of independence or individuality. This could be because your partner simply feels threatened by that, or because they don't genuinely like to see the real you. Your partner makes snide or sideways comments that seem innocent. Maybe they even say things like, oh, it was just a joke, or don't be so stiff. But deep down, you know and you can feel that such comments are meant to sting. They're meant to lower your self-esteem. And that is one of the most harmful ways that we can manipulate someone else emotionally. Your partner might mislead you or directly lie to you or just hide the truth by omitting it. Your partner tries to make you jealous on purpose to keep you feeling unsafe or to keep you on your toes and working for their affection or for their attention. You might feel judged or criticized whenever you try to act like yourself. And I think the most important red flag, the one that always stands out to me the most because it's one that I've experienced acutely, is when your nervous system cannot rest. I want to emphasize this really clearly. Pay attention always to how your body feels around another person, because before we can even process our emotions, before we can form coherent thoughts about what's happening in a connection with another person, our nervous system is ahead of us. It's always processing everything in real time, and it is usually so correct. When you feel emotionally safe, your nervous system can rest. It's not on high alert. You don't feel judged or like your value is constantly being measured by the other person. You feel like you can just be. That doesn't mean that the relationship is perfect or conflict free, but it does mean that you trust that the foundation of the relationship is strong enough to weather those things. Is emotional safety only your partner's job? No, it cannot be. A lot of us think that emotional safety is just about how the other person makes us feel, but emotional safety is really the emotional environment, right? The playground that the two of us create together. Are we both able to identify what we're feeling without defaulting to secondary emotions like hate or resentment or shame? Because emotional safety, it requires that both of us can be in touch with our primary emotions. What do I mean by that? I mean, can you notice and name what you're actually feeling before it turns into something else? So before a little bit of sadness becomes shame, before your disappointment turns into frustration, before fear has a chance to turn into anger. Because if we can't recognize our initial emotions, then we can't express them clearly. And if we can't express them clearly, then our partner can't respond to our real needs. And then they're just sort of chasing secondary emotions around. So are we able to express our needs without passive aggression? Are we able to express them without shutting down? Can we pause before reacting just long enough to ask, what am I actually feeling right now? And what is it that I really need? Emotional safety in a relationship, it starts with a shared responsibility. Both people have to be honest about what they're feeling, where those feelings come from, and how they are expressing them. It doesn't mean we can perfectly do this at all times. We're not robots, but it does mean we try to communicate in ways that are non-confrontational, that are non-volatile and non-damaging to the other person. A lot of the time, we cannot control whether someone else is emotionally safe, but we can take responsibility for how we show up ourselves. So we can be the kind of person who brings emotional safety to the table. And if we know what emotional safety actually feels like, then we're much more likely to recognize when it's missing. So we're quicker to walk away from people who don't offer it. And we stop building connections on the hope that things might feel better one day, because we do that a lot. A lot of us are not used to chasing emotional safety because we don't recognize it. But the moment we can start to place its value really, really high on our list of requirements, our relationships start to shift in that direction. Maybe not overnight, but definitely in the direction of self-respect and clarity and trust. And that's what most of us are hoping for in our close relationships. How do you feel about emotional safety? And does it have a really important place on your list of expectations in a relationship? And if you enjoy this type of content, please consider subscribing so we can keep healing together. Until next time.